必要な悪というのは常に国家が首輪をつけて支配しているものです。
Hey, so I hope you liked what you just saw. And I figured, why not get into a little bit of a breakdown? So let's just go ahead and start with the first shot. That would be the stairs with the camera pan. Just wait for the textures to collect so we can see something in the live viewer. As you can see in the viewport, there's like one tree in there. And everything else is instances. So as you can see right here, it's the same tree, and those are just CINEMA4D instances. It doesn't really do much in terms of how I export it at the end, because I'm still exporting this as an OrbX to upload to RNDR and then render this remotely. But to make my workload easier, I'm using instances, because one forester tree with all them leaves even reduced, so those leaves are even reduced in segments and sides, is really heavy. So that's why I decided to go with instances. So let me just real quick get a new camera in here so the focus is always there. And as far as my scene setup goes, we have the trees. So the tree is usually animated, but let's pause the viewport and let's get rid of the trees. So you can see what the basic camera motion is. So this is my camera motion. I wouldn't be able to show you this with the tree still intact. So yeah, we got a simple camera motion with some keyframes on the depth of field. As you can see under thin lens and depth of field, we have some keyframes. I start off with the focus being on the stairs. That is roughly this length. And then it slowly pulls up to the Torii gate at the top. So yeah, we got those trees set up, so why don't I just show you the rest of it? Just hit re-render real quick. And this is how it looks like without the trees. It's not pretty, but it's totally fine for what we're doing. So yeah, we have our octane scatter, which basically just gives us all the detail across the ground, which is not being hidden in the viewport right now for whatever reason. So that is our stair leaves, and oh yeah, it's the leaves across the stairs, my bad. So I have a scatter that gives us leaves across the stairs, and that is achieved by our stairs right here. We have this object that I created, so if I solo this, this is all that there is. Like, I went to the viewport and I had my stair object, and by selecting our live selection tool and then going into either points or just sides, you can make sure that visible only is ticked. That means everything that you see right here will be selected. Things of behind the object or on the opposite side won't be selected. So if I have a selection like this and I then hit UI to invert the selection, I can delete it. Easy as that. So I did that with my stair object. I did exactly that, and that gave me all those planes where I was able to just put that into the distribution of the scatter. And if I go in here and we hide our actual stairs, right here you can see that I painted some vertex maps using the paint tool in CINEMA4D, and then I told the scatter object to just scatter those small leaves across. We zoom in, you can see right here that if we increase the distribution, it's just along the painted areas. By just having that vertex map being plugged right here into the distribution. That's basically all that I did. So if we enable our stairs, and if we solo our stairs, we can take a look at that. If you go out of here, you can see it's basically, I cannot move my camera. It's basically just this, because I soloed everything. So let's just go back and solo this. And that's what I have. So by using the step effector, I can just move them accordingly in a linear fashion. Just make sure that the position is offset in a certain way. You can do that, of course, in whichever direction, or you can bring separate rotation in there. But yeah, that's how I created the staircase. Pretty simple. I did the same for our walls. It's basically just a cloner. So you can see here on the left-hand side, we got this brick wall, which is just small bricks put into a cloner. That's basically it. We then applied a symmetry to this. Have that same step effector. And that gives us our nice brick walls. I then, of course, have a ground, which you can see right here. Those are just planes, which I picked as the distribution surface ground for our octane scatter and the grass. Easy as that. So we have our grass object. We have those side bricks that divide our stairs from the wall like this. And as for the mix material, it's super simple. I mean, it looks convoluted, but it is super simple. So if I just auto arrange selected right here, it's basically, it's two Quixel mixer elements. One is like a rather like a stone ground, and the other is just moss. And these are just split by a dirt node. So if we take a look at our view right here again, just wait a bit, maybe press it again and then take a look at it. So if we zoom in, you can see that there's like some slight green moss across all these bricks at the corner and the crevices. So that's basically just the dirt amount doing its thing. That's basically it. I didn't think too much about it, and as a first shot, this works super well. We got an HDRI that is animated. It also has like native fog in it, so that's a scattering medium. You got your HDRI object. You can just click add fog. That works across the entire scene. You could also just use a octane fog object, but I decided not to for the simplicity of it. And that's basically it. We got some debris scatter across the stairs, also the top parts, which isn't really noticeable. And this is how I created the first shot. So let's move on to the second one. So here we are at the second shot, which is the main shrine shot. Let me just hit render real quick. And if you are interested to see how this came together in its full length, I have the full creation of this animation, including voiceover, available over at my Patreon. It's over 20 hours of video material split across 30 parts. So yeah, just wanted to make sure to let you guys know that this exists for anyone that is interested. And once again, thank you for watching this, and thank you for everyone that is supporting me on Patreon. So let's just get on with it. I think it takes a while, or I just need to press it again. Or this happens. So there we go. This is what the scene looks like. As you might have noticed, this is not an actual model. So this is just a figure of a model that I got from CG Trader. It's like a 3D printable Makima model that I made sure to prepare to how I want to use it in the scene. So let's get the elephant in the room out of the way, and that is the tree. As you can see, we're currently running at 16 million triangles, which is already a lot. So it's the same setup. It's one tree scattered across multiple instances. So let's just get those out of the way so we get a bit more assurance in how our scene handles in the viewport. We are still at 13 mil polygons because our triangles, because that is our prisoners. So if we take a look at these guys, it's 6 character models that all wear the same clothing, all using the same skin material with some slight variations in hue and saturation and contrast gamma values. We got a big temple in the back. It looks like this. It's a nicely done model, and what I did was, the only thing I added was those Shide rope talismans that can come together like this, so it's a symmetry. With this object being the focal point of it. So we clone this object across a spline. So if we just solo this, so we can take a look at that guy. I hope. We take a look at you right here. I wish I could move more freely. That's really tough. So let's actually get rid of the magic solo and put this right here. So let's zero this guy out. I guess I can't. It's just disappeared into nothingness. Oh, maybe it did not disappear into nothingness. It's just not being displayed in the viewport because of the cloner, I guess. So we got this guy right here. It's just, I cut this out using the spline tool and then using the wind deformer with a box field. I just made sure that it wobbles like this. It's nothing crazy. It's just a wind deformer that distorts it over I guess a certain size and amplitude into different directions. That's basically what I did, and I scattered all these guys across a... Where are we? There we are. So I guess we need to get our other camera in. I scattered these guys across splines that were put into a symmetry, and I did that same deforming with her hair. If we take a look at this, you can see there's like this spherical field. And here we have her hair, and here we have her bangs. So these bangs, basically just, yeah, her bangs put together with the same wind deformer that does this to the geometry. So I played around with the values like a lot until it felt kind of right, and I knew it was just pretty far away from a camera perspective standpoint, so I wouldn't need to worry about it looking off. I just needed a bit of more extra motion in there. The same goes for her tie. This was simulated in Marvelous Designer, so I just put that model into Marvelous, tagged that tie onto the OBJ at the collar, and then I simulated it. I knew it's far away, so it doesn't need to look perfect. It just needs to work. There just needs to be some slight motion to bring all this together, as this is a very static model. I could have done more, like rigging her limbs and then getting some slight movement into the arms, but that's totally fine. It worked out really nicely, and it came together pretty well, at least in my opinion. You might not think so, and that's totally fine as well. So I used the same techniques for our pathway with the bricks. Those are the same brick materials as before. And those are the same brick materials for the walls at the left and right hand side. Yeah, and we got one camera motion. Let me see that cam. Which one is it? I think it should be this one. Yeah, so we got one camera motion that slightly just moves up and down. It's super unresponsive because of the trees in the scene right now, even though they are like not visible, but they are still part of the scene. And yeah, I have that same focus pulling in here. So I start off with the depth of field focus at the ground, and then at the temple in the back, and then it slowly moves onto her, and then it just stays on her as the HDRI is moving as well. So we got that HDRI moving with that same scattering medium put into the fog. This is how that shot came together. So this is our close-up of her hands. I animated this in Bass Studio. Let's just move out right here. I animated this inside Dash Studio, so we get like some slight motion in. I tried to mimic the hand gesture of the final pose, so that I ended up at something like here, and I made sure to just get some slight movement in. I simulated the garment inside Marvelous Designer, so this is all there is to it. This is the model, and I simulated that garment, as I said before, inside Marvelous. So if we take a look at, where is it? Here we are. If we take a look at this is what's being simulated. Not much, but I just wanted to make sure that there's wind in the fabric. And if we take a look at the base model, then you can see what the hands are doing. Yeah, not much to it. I just wanted to get some slight motion in here. What I can show you is probably the skin material, which is the same for the arms and the next shot with the face. So we got something plugged into the albedo and then something plugged into the specular, but cranked down to 0.3 to still get a bit more highlights shining through. And then we got the roughness plugged into the regular roughness and the coating roughness. So the good thing about the universal material is that you have the base material sliders, plus you can get like transmission and a medium going compared to a regular glossy material, but you also have a coating layer, which means you can get an additional coating of different values on top of the material that you're already using. So in this case, our coating is plugged to 0.7 with, as I showed you before, a roughness plugged into the coating roughness and a normal plugged into the coating normal. And then there's a regular normal plugged into the regular normal, and a bump map that was highly reduced from the power of 1 to 0.1, because octane bump maps can be pretty heavy or pretty harsh, I guess. And then we have a regular RGB spectrum as our transmission, and then we have that skin map plugged into the medium using a scattering medium into the absorption, and a different reddish color tone into the scattering. So we get our make-believe subsurface scattering going on, which isn't perfect, but I'm not going for high fidelity realism. I just wanted to create shots that look nice and fit the purpose of my vision as I created this before Christmas over the course of a couple days to get my mind off a big job that I had before that. And I just wanted, ever since I read that scene and then recently watched it, I just wanted to kind of do my own take on it or just try some new things. So with that said, we can move on to our eyes shot, which is also pretty nice. I think that's my favorite out of all of them. So if we take a look at this, or if we hit NQ to enable the materials in the viewport, you can maybe see what's happening with our model and with the hair. So let's get out of here right now for a moment and just take a look at this. So that looks horrible, right? But the thing is that this works. So if we get back into our camera and if we just have that scene, like the hair works super nicely. We have the eyes open up and I can just hit render on this. So we get something that ends up looking like this. We have a hair material across all these lines, and what I did to create that hair is let's enable these splines and actually remove this guy because that one is not needed. So if we take a look at this and then solo these or just select them so you can see them, I drew some splines on my own. Like this one is not visible right now, but if we disable this, you can see that I have like my own guidelines for the splines, and I then attach those to just the head. So that's just an OBJ of the model where I was able to select like certain parts. So if we take a look at this, we have the side part right here. And if we take a look at the other model, take a look at this. We have the side parts and we have our front part. So this is where the front bangs are attached and this is where the side bangs are attached. I didn't need anything more. I just then told the hair material inside Cinema to use those guides as hairlines or as hair guides for our hair, and just played around with the values so it looked right. As I said before, if we went out, it wouldn't work as well, but you just need to work on what's going to be seen in the end. If you know, hey, I might want to jump into this and I might want to tackle this somehow else, you want to make sure that everything works straight up from whatever angle you're going for. But in this case, I knew I just wanted to get that close-up of our eyes, and that's precisely why I made sure that it just looks nice on that occasion. So if we go into our hair material, these are pretty much the same on all of them, but you can see the values that I'm using. It's color, these two are default, but thickness, clump, kink, and frizz. Same goes for this one pretty much. So if we were to get rid of all these values, you could see already like this is not the kind of look that we would be going for or that would fit the scene or nature of the scene that we're working in. This is super flat, but I want to make sure that it gets a bit of realism across. So I did all of that and I made sure that we have all these things dialed in. It's just a lot of playing around. And at the end of the day, the clump value is what does the most. But then again, the clump also directly reflects on how much hair is visible. So that's like 10,000 strands right now. So if I were to increase this, it takes a bit for the viewport to catch up. So it's more hair, but the same values, and the result differs drastically. So yeah, I just played around until all of that is ready. Or not ready, but until all of that is like a look that I like, I guess, pretty much. There's no science to it. There can be science to it, but not in my case. You just play around until you get results that look fire. And the only thing I can show you right here that may differ from what I haven't shown before is the eyes. So I tried texturing our eyes inside Substance Painter. If I were to locate this, we get something that looks like this. So that's basically it. That's the wrong eye texture. So I think I want to get into this guy. I want to get in here and locate this guy. You can see it's a lot of them. So if I were to flip through, you can see that these red lines are slowly animating across each frame. You get like these ripples going on. I did the base eye texture in Substance Painter, and then I brought it into After Effects and just applied like a ripple effector to the left and to the right eye. And plugged this in as an animated texture, so it goes from frame 0 to 124 at a frame rate of 25. And that's basically it. I have my modeled, my animated DAS model as a base. I animated them eyes closing and the pupils dilating inside DAS as well, so that's not done on a texture-based eye level, but rather the geometry-based level inside DAS Studio. Brought this into Cinema and then did all the texturing. And yeah, as I said before, the face texture is pretty much the same as our eye texture, just with the normals a bit reduced and no bump in this case, because I wanted to make sure that the skin looks smooth and not like harsh. So I did my best at trying to achieve like a smoother skin result, and we ended up with something like this. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty nice. So let's just move on to the next shot. So this is our, I guess this is our splatter shot. So it starts off right here with the clothing still intact and the clothing out of focus. So I wanted to simulate the crushing being done. And this blood simulation was done inside RealFlow, gave us something like this. So its playback is not really the best. So let's do all frames. Maybe I hit NQ for it to be visible a bit better. So this is what we have. I've played around for like 3 hours using RealFlow to achieve something like this. I'm pretty sure there's better ways or simpler ways, but playing around with sims and getting the look dialed in is something pretty nice. And from the beginning, I knew this would just be a fraction of the entire thing and also moving by pretty quickly, so I didn't put much mind to it. I just wanted to stylize it and have some parts that worked pretty well. So I think this is like 4 simulations, 4 separate simulations merged into one. So this is not all one sim, but rather different ones that I just then exported as a animated cached volume measure and imported as an alembic into that scene. And something similar goes for the clothes. So let's just take a look at those. We have these guys right here. I put the actual OBJ, so it's 2 sets of clothings. I make one disappear and one appear. So don't get tricked by this guy at the bottom, at the top. So I simulated this. I just wanted to get the crushing done. I simulated this in Marvelous Designer with a cylinder coming down from above. Or actually, I ended up simulating this inside CINEMA4D actually, because Marvelous was just giving me errors left and right. So I just put the OBJs of the clothes inside CINEMA4D and used dynamic simulation for this. And yeah, that's how I got the clothes crushing. I have one appearing and one disappearing because I like the look of the other folded ones better than the one that are just being crushed, because you can more easily discern the actual geometry of the clothing from it, and all of that is taking place like on a street like this. So this is like some Dash 3D Tokyo street asset that I just prepared. It's basic textures all the way around because I knew, hey, I just wanted to get like this in focus, the camera's moving quickly and the scene is moving by super fast, so that's all we have basically. Let's just do this so we get to our original look. So we start off right here and then we move down all across 50 frames, and that's like 2 seconds. With me knowing I might just cut away or speed it up at the end of the day, so it's basically nothing. Like that camera panning down with depth of field moving in and out. That's basically it for the wide shot. So you got simulated clothing that is being crushed down with new one appearing, so it looks a bit more appealing. And a RealFlow sim that doesn't look as good, but took me a long time to create because I'm not that versatile in RealFlow. And with that said, let's just move on to the next shot that I had to do inside CINEMA4D 2023 because of the dynamic simulation. I just didn't know how else I would get like this human brain or human head being crushed by something. So if we take a look at this right here, we can move out. I think that's fine. So we can move out and then we can hide our hair. So let's get our dude that is right here. And just take a look at this guy. So if we move through the scene, you can see this is like all wobbly, and then boom, he gets crushed. So he gets crushed by this cylinder right here, or actually by this guy right here. So we can make this a custom color, make this red so you can see what's happening. So I made sure that this thing is a cloth collider. So that's a cloth collider, and our victim base is just a regular cloth dude with some dynamics going on. I tried around with a lot of things, but I ended up not using soft body or not using balloon or anything else. I played around with the values until I thought it looked okay for the purpose of the shot that I'm using. So if we take a look at our camera, this is what's happening. And then he just gets dragged out. And of course, the eyes would be dragged out with the guy. So I made sure to actually have separate eyes popping out. So right here, you can see the eyes pop out and blood splurting out. Like the eyes shouldn't pop out, but I did it for, I guess, comedic effect. I just like the cartoonish thought of the eyes staying behind and then just kind of popping out at the end. Yeah, so then I knew, hey, the dude needs hair. So how do I go about doing this? This was pretty tough because the hair would clip through the guy right here, no matter what I simulated. I also realized that I can do proper hair colliding with the mesh that is being deformed by dynamics, but I found out that I just had to cache it and then apply a hair collision to it, and then the simulation would work. But still, due to the fact that like right here, the hair would clip through and the skull would be seen, I knew it wasn't that much. Like I knew it's like a 50 frame ordeal, if even. I knew I had to solve that somehow. So I tried a lot of things. I tried simulating stuff, and I just couldn't figure out what to do until it hit me. Like, hey, I could just make that dude's head disappear on a texture level. So what I did was, right here, I think you can even see it if I just move in a bit more. You can even see it right here. We take a look at this. At this part, there's like his head texture is just missing, right? So we can even move one frame back, like right here. So his head texture is just missing. And I did that because if I wouldn't have done that, the head would clip through too much. So right here, if we take a look at our skin texture, which is basically the same as before, just no rough or specular, just bump it normal. We take a look at this guy. We have this texture that animates. So this means the head is fully visible. And that means the top part is not visible. It's the other way around. I inverted this at the end of the day. So if we were to invert it here, you can see what it's doing. And luckily, due to that, we can actually just get around this. I mean, you can see it right here, but that doesn't matter because if we go one frame to here, then this works super well. So you can see the hair is actually just not clipping through anything. If I were to remove this, you could see that this is happening. That's not what I wanted, and it took me a while to figure it out, but I'm glad I did at the end of the day because the solution is pretty simple, right? And I then did the same for, not the same, but I used the same blood simulation that I used in the shot before, just with a random offset, and I just have that splatter up like this. So as it gets crushed, the eyes fall behind and he just gets crushed and the blood splatters up. So I thought that would look cool. There's a lot of motion blur and depth of field. None of this is pretty grounded in realism. But yeah, that was never the intention. I just wanted to create something that looked nice. So let's just move on to our last shot, which would be the crows, or the crows. So let's go into here, and then we go into this shot. There's not much to say about that one. It's one FBX model of an animated bird with different variants. So it's both done in the same timeline. I just have a stage object with our first camera that is taking place right here. So we can also just do quick shading with this. So the first camera is taking place right here, And then as we move onto our second camera at frame 88, a keyframe is done, and then we move to this camera. So if I were to disable the stage object and disable this, you can see that this is where the first part of our scene is taking place. And the bird actually isn't moving, so that was a problem. I thought that the bird would actually be moving, but I had to make sure that if we take a look at the crow flying away right here, we can hide this and unhide this. So this is not the right direction, but the bird actually just stood on this. And I realized, oh, hey, the bird isn't flying away. It's just this thing that is moving away. That's not a big deal. I just had to make sure that the keyframes for this, the position keyframes were kept for that little pole, and everything else was set to default. And I then just placed that telephone pole under this as a child, which means, hey, our telephone pole would move the exact same way as that little like stick would do. So that's how I was able to just have the bird flying away from the telephone pole technically. But of course I had to make sure, hey, if the camera isn't moving following the bird, but rather the bird is being static, I still had to make sure that there's motion blur in the scene somewhat. So I gave everything in that chain a octane object tag and just made sure that our motion blur is set to transform and vertex. So that's exactly what gave me a bit of a motion blur, if not real actual motion blur, but it worked out at the end. So yeah, right here you can see our second scene that starts at right here. So we have that camera. It moves a bit weird, but I knew, hey, if it works out at the end, no matter the camera move, it's fine. So yeah, the bird is starting to fly right here, and this is where the camera changes. So this is where the stage object actually starts with the second camera, and that's what's being done. Boom. So I knew I wanted to have like that bird flying away from a pole, and then cut to the bird in a bit closer, to then have it pan across the camera, where I can then have a text reveal at the end that you've seen from the animation at the beginning. That's how I wanted to go about solving that. And this is how I basically created the animation. So the crows are both in one scene, and what I might need to address is the way how I solved the bird flying. That's simple. I just created a spline and put a align to spline deformer or tag onto our second bird flying away, and then you can just animate the guy however you want, which starts right here. As you can see at the bottom right, it starts animating, and the camera moves in. That camera also has like focal length of 55. If that's I don't think that's worth mentioning. They're all different focal lengths for the different shots. But yeah, so if we just take a look at our stage objects and we can play that back, we have that crow starting to fly away, cutting to it just being in there. And what I did for myself to make sure that the motion kind of works is I created a sphere and I just scaled this up by a lot. So if I were to do this and then I increase the segments to like 50, and then under display I can do like lines or hidden lines, it doesn't matter. So if we take a look right here, then you can clearly see how the camera is moving in relation to everything else. Because before that you had no real landmarks or markers where you could track the camera movement in the back to see if it works. And that's what I ended up doing. Like I had this dome in here to make sure that all of this works. And if I were to enable the live viewer, you can see how it works out at the end. So I just need to delete that sphere, and this is what we have. So due to that motion blur and that motion blur in the camera, we get some nice results, even though the bird model itself doesn't really look that good. So if I were to create a new cam right here, and if I were to delete these motion blur Octane object tags and go like this, so this is how our bird model looks, which isn't really not that nice, but due to the fact that we have that motion blur and that Octane object tag motion blur, we can get away with a lot of things in like if there's movement like this involved, and it worked out pretty nicely at the end. I was glad because the model that I purchased didn't have the perfect opacity maps included, even though it looked like it in the preview. But yeah, I'm glad I still solved it, and then we went to After Effects for color correcting. So this is where we are at the end of the day. Inside After Effects, I know that I do have to switch to DaVinci Resolve at one point, but so far so good. So I just want to show you one example shot on what I did. I won't go into the detail of what's going on in the color correction sense because the video would be too long otherwise. So yeah, let's just go through one shot. So we start off with this guy right here. This is our base shot. This is what we got out of cinema, like this. So this is what we got straight out of cinema. We got that nice little animation. And what I did was basically just apply a colorista effect like this. So I played around with its values. I added a LUT that is at 40% strength, and then played around with our highlight, midtone, and shadow values, a bit of the saturation, and some of the color wheel to get a look going that is nice. The color correction across all scenes is basically the same, so it is a bit coherent. I then added this right here because I realized, oh damn, the initial render didn't have a wind effector to its hair that was nice enough. So I re-rendered the entire scene just without the trees so it wouldn't be as heavy and wouldn't take as long. And just basically replaced that part of it by using a object layer color. If we single that out and then we take a look at this, this is what I exported out of CINEMA4D. So that's also passes that I exported. I applied a key light, sampled that green color, and then made sure that this layer with the new updated wind effector is using a Luma matte, in our case a Luma inverted map. And that's how I fixed the hair. So I then added a denoised diffuse direct as our next layer. So this is the diffuse, the denoise diffuse path that I set to lighten with a transparency of 100%, just to push out a bit more color values at the back end of the scene. So you can see right here that using this, we can actually make our wood from the temple more brownish. Don't tell anyone about anything. I never realized that there was a tile missing from the temple roof. That's just how it is. That's just how the world building works. I guess the temple needs some maintenance, but yeah, just make sure to not tell anyone. We then applied a post-processing with similar effects. So this is what we got straight out of cinema, like this. So that transparency is set to 40 with the same color correction colorista 5 layer applied and some additional levels to just punch in the blacks. And we get like a subtle bloom going on, nothing too much, but it works in our case. And then I used our Z-depth map, just reduce all these effects. So this is our Z-depth map we got from Cinema as a separate pass. I applied a levels to it and I applied a hue saturation to it. And then we just set it at 23 opacity like this, and this should actually be set to screen, I think. So then we get a nice fog going that lifts our scene a bit more apart from the background, and we get some additional detail and just atmosphere out of it. And this is basically what has been done for every other shot. At the end, you get something like this. I adjusted a lot of shots and I did some additional color correcting with grain, and all this comes together pretty nicely. And the breakdown did run for a bit longer than expected, but I still hope that you enjoyed this. And as I said before, if you are interested in more, the entire 21+ hour process, including commentary, is available for everyone on my Patreon. But even if you don't subscribe there, I still thank you a lot for just watching this in its entirety. I hope you guys had a nice Christmas or nice few past days. And yeah, see you guys in the new year. And thank you once again for tuning in.